Hello and welcome to the Essex Boys Murder Case Part 55. Before watching this video, I recommend watching Part 4 on YouTube first, as these videos are all about the key individuals and the murder victims' movements on the day of the 6th of December 1995. A quick mention to the Facebook page called The Real Essex Boys Murder Club. If you're interested, please feel free to join, as some great people on there and with a lot of knowledge on this subject. So I'm going to make a new set of videos, and they are based on that 5:03 PM phone call made to Pat Tates' mobile and who it could have been. I did say in a previous video that I would come back to this 5:03 PM call and who it could have been, which just may shock you. If you've been following my Day of the Murder videos, you will know I've been at 7:05 PM for a while. And the reason for that is because it was the first estimated time the murders supposedly happened. So there was a lot to cram in at this time slot. Now, after the next set of videos I'm going to do, I will be moving on from 7:05 PM and follow on with Mick Steele, Jack and Darren Nichols' journey that night according to Darren Nichols' testimony. And then when I've finished with theirs, I can move on to Billy Jasper's version of events and follow his route he supposedly took that evening with Jesse Gale and the hitman, better known as Mr. D, being Dean Hegarty from Hornchurch. So on with the 5:03 PM call videos. Now, as I explained in a previous video, I do not know if this call was made on the 5th of December 1995, which was a day before the murders, or the 6th of December, which was the day of the murders, as it was not included in the phone log evidence at the trial. In my recce videos, which are part 34 to part 40, I looked at the possibility of Mick Steele, Jack, Darren Nichols and anyone else doing reconnaissance missions, just choosing drop-off points, timing journeys and finding a place to commit the executions a few weeks before and the day before the murders. The day before being the 5th. And I covered in those videos if they could have left the chosen murder location at White House Farm and then drive to Brentwood and use a phone box to call Pat Tates' mobile to tell him that they wanted to meet up tomorrow to show the Essex Boys where the intended drug drop will take place. But in fact there was no drugs drop in the upcoming days and they just wanted to lure them to their deaths. I also looked into the possibility the call could have been made on the 6th, being the day of the murders. Now in these videos I'm going to go into more detail on whether Pat Tate received that call on the 5th or 6th of December and who it could have been who phoned him. So first of all, I want to start with the 5th of December, which was the day before the murders, and look into the possibility of it being Mick Steele, who, along with Jack and Darren Nichols, after finishing their final recce, drives to the Brentwood area and phones Pat Tate to tell him they'll meet in a day or two to show the Essex Boys where the intended drugs drop will take place, but unknown to them, it's a ploy to lure Tucker, Tate and Rolfe to their deaths. If you've been following the Day of the Murder videos, you will recognise this area here, which is Brentwood. And this is the A127, which goes both ways. And this place here is the Halfway House pub. And I'll just quickly show you the car park. It's quite a large car park, to be honest with you. And by the looks of it, it's been updated. Last time I were here on Google Maps, this white fencing here, this weren't here, and this grass patch. So that's new. And then there's these yellow and black speed humps. That wasn't there. So that's quite new. But this car park is where Darren Nichols says Mick Steele met the Essex Boys here on the night of their murders. I tell you what I'll do is give you a little look round at this area. So we'll just go down here. Just show you a few more places of interest. Just a bit further. Now, this place here is a travel lodge, and in a previous video, I think it was part 46, I covered witnesses, Joseph Kowalinsky and his partner, and what they said they did and saw on the night of the murders. Now, part 46 was one of my Hitman videos, and it was Joseph Kowalinsky who saw the balaclava man coming out of a field close to the murder scene. From his statement, I followed his journey when they arrived in Brentwood that evening. He was a dental practitioner who worked in different parts of Essex. He had finished work for the day and decided to look for overnight accommodation due to him having to work in Basildon the following day instead of driving all the way back to Sudbury in London, then setting back off to Basildon the next day. On the 6th of December 1995, it was snowing and getting worse, and according to Joseph Kowalinsky, him and his partner called at this travel lodge to see if they had any spare rooms for the night, but unfortunately they were full up. Now this is where it gets interesting, because Joseph Kowalinsky and his partner arrived at this travel lodge about 6 to 6:15 p.m. Now this is roughly the same time Darren Nichols says Mick Steele and the Essex Boys met in the car park of the halfway house just over to the right. I tell you what, I've just noticed as well. Joseph Kowalinsky said he called and had a meal at the Little Chef, which was next door to Travelodge, and it is now a Starbucks. How time changes. So what we'll do is we'll just go back to the halfway house pub and have another look at the car park. Here we are. Now, according to Darren Nichols' testimony, he said he and Jack arrived in this car park first, and he was told by Jack to park at the back, which would have been just here that I'm circling now. Then Jack changed his mind and told Darren Nichols to park the Passat near the front, which was just down here, this bit that I'm circling now. And the Passat was facing, with the headlights facing towards the pub in this direction. Now Mick parked his Toyota in the middle of the car park, round about here, and he was waiting for the Essex Boys to turn up, and as soon as they did, Jack and Darren would set off to Rettendon. Now, I wouldn't rule out that Mick Steele, Darren Nichols and Jack met someone here that night who knew Tucker, Tate and Rolfe, and they also knew they were going to be executed. Now, there is a front entrance and a back entrance to this car park, so what I will do is use the front entrance here and head off towards the roundabout, and then I'll have a look around the back eventually. So let's set off towards the roundabout. It's just a short distance, this, after you leave the front entrance. Now this is the same journey Darren Nichols and Jack took that night when they left the car park. According to Darren Nichols' statements, they waited for the Range Rover to turn up, and that was their cue to set off ahead and get to Rettendon. But yeah, basically I just want to familiarise you with this area, as it's all connected to the murders. So we're about halfway up the slip road now. As you can see, the first exit is for Brentwood and the A128. So what I'm going to do now, before I go to the back entrance of that car park, I'm just going to show you the route along the A127 where the Essex Boys would have taken that evening, and when they got to this roundabout, and just gives you a feel for this video. So you've got, you know, the surrounding areas. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll just go to the A127 and show you where Craig Rolfe would turn off that evening. So, after Craig Rolfe picked Tony Tucker up, they drove to Gordon Road and picked Pat Tates up, and then they would headed towards the A127. And Craig Rolfe would have come off at this slip road here, heading towards the roundabout that we've just been at. And he would have been in this lane. And I think it's he's going to be turning off at the third exit, yeah, for the A128 for Brentwood. So yeah, he would have come along here in the Range Rover. It will look familiar when we get round this corner. Now, this exit here takes you back onto the A127 where we've just been, but it's not the route the Essex Boys would have taken that evening, because you've got to drive down there about 3 miles, turn around at the next roundabout and make your way back up onto the A127 to use the front entrance. And I'd just like to note as well that Darren Nichols did say in his statement that the Essex Boys used the rear entrance. So there may be some parts of Darren Nichols' testimony that are fact, but I'd also say there's a lot of it that is fiction. Do you know what? Just where these trees are here, they're hiding the actual slip road to where we've just been, and the halfway house pub is round about here. And just up here is the actual slip road that they used that evening. That's the one. That's the one where we were just at. And this is the left turning onto the A128 for Brentwood. And Craig Rolfe that evening would have turned on to this road. So Craig Rolfe takes his turning and heads down it with Tony Tucker and Pat Tates inside the Range Rover. I know I've gone off the video slightly, but I want you to get a feel for this area. It is quite important to that 5:03 PM call that was made to Pat Tates' mobile, as it was made from a telephone kiosk in this area. Talking of that phone call, I have searched and searched for a telephone box close to the halfway house pub that they were talking about, but I couldn't find the one. I then looked online, and in the early 90s BT was removing the red telephone boxes and replacing them with the new glass boxes with a green frame around it. But they weren't putting up as many glass green boxes as the red ones that they were taking down. So you now have glass telephone boxes, but less of them as when we had the red ones up. I mean, I did search different routes leading away from the halfway house pub, but I couldn't find any, so I've come to the conclusion that maybe that call was made from the halfway house pub public phone or the Little Chef public phone next door to the pub, or from the travel lodge I mentioned earlier. You know, I might have just missed the box when I was looking around for it, to be honest with you. But one thing remains, is that Pat Tate did indeed receive a call to his mobile from a telephone box or kiosk in this area either on the 5th or 6th of December 1995 at 5:03 PM. So we're just coming up to the lane that leads to the back entrance of the pub car park. See if we can just go down here. Yep. Here we are. Now, if you've been following my Day of the Murder videos, you will recognise this lane, as I went down it at about the 6:05 PM time frame, when they would have arrived and gone down it, the Essex Boys. Now, according to Darren Nichols, he and Jack and Mick Steele had already used it and were there in the car park that evening. Do you know what? I also use this lane in my recce videos, which is a 7-parter. And if you haven't seen them, they're definitely worth a watch. Oh. Look here what I've noticed on the left. I mean, I've always said some of Darren Nichols' testimony is believable because stuff adds up, but he has had help, as parts of it is lies. I mean, it's part fact, part fiction is his testimony. I mean, in his evidence, he says Jack drove him down to the entrance of Thorndon Country Park, and that Jack got out and tried to put some different number plates over the original ones. Personally, I think they were a hierarchy with him, with Jack and Mick Steele, with Mick being the brains and Jack being the right-hand man. And Jack gave Darren Nichols all the skivvy jobs anyway. I mean, he even admits to being a gopher type person for Mick in his statements. So I think Jack would have made Nichols get out and change the number plates. Now, when Darren Nichols says they drove down a lane to get to the entrance of Thorndon Country Park to change the number plates, the officer interviewing him asked why they didn't just change it along the lane which leads to the back entrance of the pub car park. To which Darren Nichols says it was too risky because the Range Rover would be going down that lane and they didn't want to be seen by the Essex Boys. I mean, can you imagine if they did decide to change the number plates here, just off the lane, and the Essex Boys noticed Jack and Darren Nichols changing the number plates right here? I mean, Pat would have recognised them both, and don't forget, he's after Darren Nichols because of the dodgy dud cannabis deal that Nichols set up. I mean, things could have been totally different if they were spotted changing the plates right here that night. So we'll carry on down the lane. I mean, I'll say it again about Darren Nichols' testimony. It's made up of a part fact, part fiction. I mean, classic example back there that he may have well been telling the truth about not wanting to be seen changing the number plates on this lane, as they knew the Essex Boys would be driving down it and didn't want to be seen, so they do it further along the A128 when they take the junction for Brentwood and find that lane that leads to the Thorndon Country Park. I mean, it does make more sense to do it away from this lane. I mean, the part fiction of his testimony to me is the part where he's at the Thorndon Country Park entrance and says to Jack, he says Jack gets out of the Passat, goes to the boot and gets out 2 registration plates and tries to stick them over the original ones. I mean, as far as Darren Nichols is aware at this point of his story is Mick Steele is going to meet the Essex Boys over a drugs deal and nothing more. I mean, no money is going to be exchanged. No drugs are going to be switching hands. I mean, Mick Steele is just going to meet with Tucker, Tate and Rolf about a drugs deal coming up. So why the hell did Darren Nichols say to Jack, what are you doing trying to hide the original number plates? Mick's only going to meet the Essex Boys to talk about an upcoming drugs deal. I mean, it's a bit extreme. You know, why didn't you say to him, it's a bit extreme, Jack? Change it number plates just because Mick's going to talk about an upcoming drugs deal. Why would you want to change number plates if you didn't know something was going to happen that evening? It just doesn't make sense. He must have been more involved, Darren Nichols. I mean, the police never asked him this when he's been interviewed. I mean, is it because he knew the murders were going to take place, but he had made a deal with the police that if he was to be an expert supergrass, he cannot talk about any recce's he had done with the others? I mean, if he did it, it would be classed as premeditated murder, and he knew what was going to happen, and he wouldn't be able to be used as a supergrass, and the trial would probably collapse. I mean, have a look through Darren Nichols' second statement and notice the questions are all about that evening. I mean, no questions are asked about the 5th, the day before the murders, because if they was, then the defence could pick holes in it and prove he was indeed planning the executions along with Mick and Jack. I mean, them questions Darren Nichols was asked in the interview were cleverly put together, and he was coached into what he had to say so he didn't slip up and implicate himself in the triple murders. So we're almost at the back entrance of the pub car park. It's just here on the right. Just ahead here is the A127. Here we are, the entrance, the back entrance to the Halfway House pub car park. So, as I enter the car park, I'll show you where Jack told Darren Nichols to first park up at the back of the car park, which was just over here. I mean, in previous videos I have been in this car park before, and I know I've mentioned it before, but every time I come in here that blue Range Rover freaks me out. This one here, I mean, it's the exact replica of the Essex Boys Range Rover. The same colour, the same model. I mean, out of all the cars you could have in this car park, they had to have a blue Range Rover in here. I mean, is it a sign from above Tucker, Tate and Rolf tried to tell me that something happened at this car park that I haven't covered. It might be them telling me to do another crime scene video, because the clue to their killer or killers is in the Range Rover or at that crime scene. I mean, I've got to admit, I am superstitious. But when I've been making these videos in the past, I have come across Range Rovers. When I was at about the 12 to 12:05 PM time frame in these Day of the Murder videos, I was at the garage where the Essex Boys left the Range Rover and they got into Peter Cuthbert's 4x4. Now, there was a Range Rover at that garage when I covered that particular time frame. And there has been a few more, but I can't remember them from the top of my head. But I guarantee you we will come across more Range Rovers as we move on from 7:05 PM soon. I mean, if I do want to spot them as I'm making these videos, I will let the viewers know and point them out to you. But yeah, that's just spooky, is that. So on this video, we've got to Jack telling Darren Nichols to park at the top of the car park just here. Now what I'll do now is I'll show you where Mick Steele was parked when he entered the car park first. Now he parked in the middle, round about here, waiting for the Essex Boys to turn up in the Range Rover. Now, before the Range Rover turns up, Jack changes his mind and wants Darren Nichols to park near the front of the car park, which is just down here. Like I said earlier, he tells Nichols to park down here with the headlights facing the pub. Now, I think the reason why Jack wanted to park at the front is because it's closer to the front entrance and the slip road, and it can also see Mick's Toyota, and it can spot when the Range Rover turns up in this car park. I mean, the other reason maybe because he didn't want to be risked him or Darren Nichols being noticed as they drove past the Range Rover as it turned up. So I've given you a small tour of this particular area of Brentwood, which is significant to these videos and the case. I hope you've enjoyed the video so far, because basically I just want you to get a sense of the area for these 5:03 PM, that call, which was made to Pat Tates' mobile, and you get to see that spooky blue Range Rover that was parked yet again in this car park. So what I'll do now is just quickly finish this video for today, and if a final recce was done by Mick Steele and the others the day before the planned executions, they would have met at Mark's T. Mick Steele would have used his own vehicle, with Darren Nichols and Jack using another. From there they would have driven down the A12 and eventually turned up at the junction for Brentwood. Their first port of call would be to check the lane at Thorndon Country Park to make sure it's not obstructed by roadworks or closed off, as this is where Jack and Darren Nichols will change the number plate on the Passat. The next location they're going to arrive at is this place here, the Halfway House pub. This is where Mick Steele will meet up with Tucker, Tate and Rolf. And as soon as the Range Rover turns up, Darren Nichols and Jack will set off to Rettendon, using the slip road and going along the A127. Now Mick Steele will give them enough time to get to the farm track by getting the Essex Boys to follow him in convoy to the Hungry Hippo pub, which is in Rayleigh, which goes past the Rettendon Turnpike. And this gives the others time to get into place for the executions. Now, at the Hungry Hippo, Mick Steele leaves his Toyota Hilux there and gets into the Range Rover and gives them directions to where the intended drugs drop would take place, but in reality it will be luring them to their deaths. So that's it for part 1 of the 5:03 PM phone call that was made from this area in Brentwood to Pat Tates mobile either on the 5th or the 6th of December 1995. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and it shouldn't be too long before part 2 is up. Don't forget, you can subscribe to my channel on my videos based on the Essex Boys murders, and don't forget you can join the Facebook group called the Real Essex Boys Murder Club. We have over 30k members I think now, last time I checked, and there's posts going on a daily basis. So there you go, that is that for part 1 of the 5:03 PM phone call videos.